The regular briefing session of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. We have a pretty good session to go through today, and I'm going to turn the meeting now over to the Vice Chairman of the Board, Don Martin. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our briefing today is about it's our second briefing for the Thursday, February 3rd, 2022 meeting, and we'll actually go over that briefing after we finish 6 discussion items. We have 6 discussion items scheduled for the day, and the first is our weekly COVID-19 update from Joshua Swift, our Health Department Director. So Joshua, you are either on virtually or on. I don't see you out there.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. I hope you can hear me and see me. Bringing up my presentation. All right. Hopefully you can see the presentation. So this is our update for today, January 27th, 2022 for Forsyth County. You can see we reported 691 cases today. Over the last 14 days, we have reported 12,306 cases. Our average cases per day is now 879. This is actually less than last week when we were up to 950 cases per day. Percent positivity as of the 25th, that snapshot in time for that day was 38%. What we're seeing overall for the week of the 16th of January was over 40%. Our deaths are at 678 total since the beginning of the pandemic. Percentage of our population that's fully vaccinated, adults, has risen from 70% to 71%, and 75% of the population has had at least one dose for adults. Just a few numbers I wanted to pull out and really just put on a separate slide. So what we're seeing, I've talked with Dr. Old and what you're hearing from the state and looking across the nation, our cases are leveling off. They're actually down 1% in the last 14 days. But I would note that we're talking about leveling off at an all-time record high. We're seeing almost 900 cases per day on average. So it's still, a month ago we were having 100 cases per day, maybe 150. So they have leveled off. Deaths, though, have increased 108% in the last 14 days. That's something we saw in other jurisdictions. When you looked at the New York cities, when you looked in the UK, where Omicron hit earlier, after cases leveled off, that's when deaths started going up. We have reported here in Forsyth County 52 deaths in January. And we know of the 75 Forsyth County residents who are in the hospital currently in Forsyth County hospitals. Cases per week, this shows where we were at a high of the week before at 8,000. We have now dropped 4,344. We'll get more information early next week. We believe some of this could have been due to the weather and less people getting tested. But as I said before, we are seeing a leveling off. I don't believe it's necessarily cut in half like this graphic shows, but this is the most up-to-date data that we have currently as far as cases per week. Vaccination status, looking at across the county, looking at the demographics by race and by age, these numbers continue to go up. Even in the last week, we've seen that the number of persons 75 and older who are fully vaccinated has gone up from 92% to 93%. We also recently have gotten data that shows almost 105,000 Forsyth County residents have got a booster shot or a third dose. We don't have the breakdown by age and race, but we do have that whole number that shows actually it's 104,910, so almost 105,000. Next, we really want to make sure that the public knows, and we put this on social media, there are lots of options out there in the community for testing. You can see those options through Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist, through Mako Medical, Novant Health, and through Star Med. Several locations spread throughout the community, lots of hours available during the day, evenings, and on weekends. And my last slide, just encouraging masking. The health department worked with DSS to distribute over 73,000 N95 masks to partners in the public, city and county staff last week. We're trying to get more masks. The state has opened up resources. We're asking for more, and hopefully we'll have more to distribute soon. And just encouraging everyone to wear a mask indoors as we battle through this surge in cases. And even though we're starting to see a leveling off in the cases, we're still at these very high numbers, and it's very prevalent. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Any questions for Joshua?
Just one question, please. Thank you, Josh, again for a detailed report. I had a question about the number of people in the hospital, that number 75. Is that an increase in the last couple of reports you made, or is that pretty standard or consistent?
Well, it is obviously the best person for some of these hospital questions. I see Mr. Lindsay with Novant. Jeff will be on after me. But as far as what we have seen throughout the pandemic, we got over 100 at some points during the pandemic. But most recently, we were in December in the 50s. So now we're up, it's over 75. We did at one point have close to 100 about a week or two ago during the spike, most severe time. So it seems to be leveling off somewhat, but we're still trying to keep a pulse on that. It's still, like I said, 75 is not the highest we've ever been, but it is higher than we were in mid-December.
Joshua, could you comment at all on the number of cases that we're now having in the jail and the detention center? 'Cause I just read in the paper today that we've crossed on 104, 105 or something, and another 200 may be affected over a period of time. I mean, I was just trying to wonder about our protocols and what do we do, and is there anything we could do to?
Yeah. So we're working with the jail. Those individuals were tested. Most were tested around 2 weeks ago. 143 positive residents. Also know that there were several positive staff. Our staff, our communicable disease team, is working with the jail staff. Vaccine is offered to all residents of the detention center as well as all the staff. So we're working with them on those, trying to keep their measures, keep it safe, but also offering the vaccine as well.
Other questions for Joshua? Well, as usual, thank you for the work you're doing, Joshua, and we appreciate your weekly report.
Thank you.
We have on the phone Jeff Lindsay on line 2 from Novant Health, and he's going to speak to us some about Commissioner Elameen's question about sort of the trends and the impact on the hospitals. So, Jeff, you are on. We saw your picture a minute or two ago, so.
Hold on,
We just heard that.
Yeah.
We just heard you.
Okay, I actually texted Mr. Lindsay, and he said he's working on it. He can't get in. I will let him know that we actually heard him.
Mr. Manager, this is Ashley. Mr.
Hey,
Lindsay is. I see his name. He is muted right at the moment. He'll need to unmute his microphone.
Okay, I will text him that. You'll need to unmute. See if that does it. And Ashley, your volume is not great in the room, and I was just going to make mention she is participating, but she is participating virtually. So let's see if we can get Jeff in. All right, so we're having that same issue we had last week with he can't actually hear us. So, Mr. Vice Chairman, why don't we do this? Why don't we go to... Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
You there,
We
Jeff?
can hear you, Jeff.
That's it. You. See if that works. Testing, Jeff. Can you hear us? He says no. All right. So why don't we go on to the next one, and we'll get working on that. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Our second discussion item is an annual report from the Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., and we're very pleased to have Mark Owen, the president, here, and he is here in person to give us a report. Had a big day yesterday for our whole region, and so that's great, and we can start with some celebratory news.
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having me here in person. Is it okay to remove so you can hear me a little bit better? We also have our Senior VP of Economic Development, Laura Lee, who is on virtually. We're going to tag team the presentation for you today. Big day yesterday at PTI with the announcement of Boom Supersonic. Really excited for that addition to our region, and we believe that that's going to help not only our full region, but also have some advantages for Smith-Reynolds Airport that we'll touch on just briefly. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that hopefully we can share. I know that they are also working on our immediate past chair, Mr. Jeff Lindsay's microphone. So I'm not sure if we can pull that up or not, if we may just wait for just a second.
We can see. So
You can,
if she
you can
shares
see
the
the-
screen, I think we'll see it.
okay. I know we had it sent over ahead of time. Laura, let me
Oh,
see.
you actually have it here. Okay.
If may I just pull it up on this computer? Would that be okay with everyone?
We got it.
You able to see that? Okay, great. Learning some technology on the fly here. Thank you for your patience. So we're just here today to give you an update. As you know, obviously you are a major supporter, funder, partner, contributor, and team member of our whole community in our economic development efforts. What we want to do today is give you an update on how it went through 2021 and what we have underway so far. I just want to start by a reminder of our 2030 goals as Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. We have three main goals that we focus on by 2030. We will be a top mid-sized city for economic growth. We will be a more equitable community, utilizing our education initiatives and community partnerships to increase economic equity and mobility for all Forsyth County residents. And we'll be the best place to raise a family. That's something we really focus on, whatever that family unit may look like. So as you hear some of our updates, these are the goals that we keep in mind as we move forward. We've really, with the work with partnership with Kyle Haney and his team and others in our community, we have identified key target industry sectors. These are sectors that we already excel in Forsyth County, but also have opportunity for growth. And these are our target areas that we specifically look for new company partners to come to Forsyth County. Those are advanced manufacturing, headquarters and business services, technology and high growth entrepreneurship, healthcare and life sciences, and aviation and aerospace. So how did we do? In 2021, we had some big results. We were very proud and excited as a community, as a collection of partners. We were able to have some major announcements. 505 new jobs committed in first year of Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., with $296 million of capital investment coming to Forsyth County. We are really thrilled at these numbers, and you can see some of the companies that you see here at the bottom. It's a great blend of an expansion projects of those that are already here in our community that we really want to focus on, as well as recruiting a major headquarters to Whitaker Park from New York in Nature's Value, Inc. You recognize Garner Foods, Hayward, and then of course Ardagh Group, that is the metal canning facility. I'd really like to turn this over to Laura Lee, our Senior VP now virtually. Laura is the one who has been leading our economic development team. She can tell you the nuts and bolts of how exactly we got to these wins, how our team has grown over the last year, share some really great numbers with you, and then I'm going to close this out. But I'll drive the presentation for you, Laura, as we go into our return on investment.
Thank you, Mark. And as Mark mentioned, it's a pleasure to be with you today, Commissioners, to share our team's results in economic development in 2021. In addition to the new jobs that Mark just shared, we've been able to bring a substantial ROI to the county in 2021, while the total tax revenue that was generated over 5 years from the projects we've announced in 2021 alone is around $8.5 million. The net new, which accounts for incentive support, is nearly $5.5 million. So you'll also note that not all these projects were incentivized by the county. So this net new figure means Forsyth County will see over $1 million of additional tax revenue annually. I think it's important to note that this net new tax revenue is, like Mark mentioned, from a single year's work, our first full year as Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. So we believe these results, along with job growth, is why economic development is a truly worthwhile investment for our community. And Mark, if you can go to the next slide. I do want to assure you that we're not slowing down. I'll share a bit about our current project activity now. So we're currently working close to 60 projects, which includes both existing Forsyth County companies and new attraction opportunities. And our pipeline represents over 9,000 potential new jobs and nearly $3.5 billion in potential capital investment. This level of activity is higher than years past, and we were hovering around 40 to 45 projects in the first quarter of 2021, just to give you a little context of where we started over a year ago. So we've been grateful for that increased activity. Specifically, we've been working a strong pipeline of advanced manufacturing projects, which do span a lot of industries. And we're pleased that we've experienced a significant increase in life science projects for which we're under consideration. And we've seen a 600% increase in this industry's projects since 2018. And actually had a site visit with one yesterday. And I did want to specifically share with you about how engaged we've been in submitting Tanglewood Business Park along with Smith Reynolds sites for projects. We submitted sites at Smith Reynolds for 3 aerospace projects in 2021, which ranged in size from 10 jobs that were needing around 20 to 40,000 square feet to one project with 700 jobs requiring 1 million square feet. We've had many project inquiries over 2021 that requested at least 100 acres for a greenfield site with rail access, for which Tanglewood Business Park is a tremendous fit. And we submitted Tanglewood for 16 projects in 2021, 11 of which are still active. And those projects were mainly within advanced manufacturing and then healthcare, life science, and technology. And these particular projects that Tanglewood was submitted for include the largest potential job creation along with investment opportunities that we worked in 2021, which have increasingly included electric vehicle-related requests. In addition to our project work, Walter Farabee on our team made 83 existing industry visits or calls in 2021, and we've also worked really closely with our city-county planning to identify new potential industrial sites, and we've shared over 700 acres with local developers for opportunities for new industrial sites being added to the county. Mark, if you'll go to the next slide. So we've also been focused on supporting our startup founders and entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we initiated several significant projects across 2021 that I'd like to share with you. So to begin, we launched a resources finder, which really serves as a directory of all the entrepreneurial support organizations that make up our Forsyth County ecosystem. And you'll see in this slide a quick overview of the organizations that are represented here, along with the ease of navigating this tool. It's nice to have something interactive. And then if you can go to the next slide, Mark. Nordic Amplify is another initiative that we've launched to support growth stage medical technology and digital health companies. And we've partnered specifically with Nordic Innovation and the trade partner organizations for 5 Nordic countries, including Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. And that just to provide them a comprehensive training on launching a business within the U.S. healthcare system. So both Novant and Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist have been fantastic partners, and we've been able to connect with many individuals in both these health systems to serve as specific mentors for these companies. So we've been pleased to connect specifically with 25 Nordic companies through our 2 cohorts we had in 2020 and now 2021, and expect to host the representatives from these companies in May of this year. So this initial virtual partnership has really been heartening to see foreign direct investment at a time when we've not been able to host people in person. If you'll go to the next slide, Mark. We also launched the Winston-Salem Partners Roundtable Fund, or WHISPER Fund, in 2021. This pledge fund offers seed stage capital to startups, and it has around 70 local members. So the goal with WHISPER is really to provide a local funding opportunity to entrepreneurs, and specifically within industries that Winston-Salem is predisposed to excel, very similar to our target industries. And we've now hosted 3 pitch nights with 4 local startups that have pitched to the group, and 3 of the deals have been finalized, and we've committed to invest over $550,000 collectively in these companies, which is just exciting to start out and have that in a 6-month time frame. And Mark, if you'll go to the next slide. So to tie all of our work together and share how we're getting the word out about Forsyth County, I wanted to end on our external awareness. So you'll see on this slide a quick snapshot for the year that showcases how we're reaching new audiences. We're specifically targeting major U.S. metros for much of this content and have seen great responses and interaction, especially when we benchmark against other communities. So thank you again for your support and partnership with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. I'll turn it back over to Mark to close out our presentation.
Thank you, Laura. As you can see, we've been very active and we have a great team at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. And thank you, Laura, for your leadership over this past year as we have launched. Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. had some efforts, had some successes, and still have never had our whole team in the building together at the same time. So pretty amazing to think about as we've been doing this in a virtual world. But we've had to adapt the way that we do site visits. We've done virtual site visits. We FaceTimed someone in Greece and walked them through a building over FaceTime. We are identifying new and adaptive ways to share the message of economic development here in Forsyth County, and we're just getting started. So I'd like to just end with saying we've been able to provide a return on that investment that you've made into our organization and that you're committing into the community, and together we can continue to do that going forward. So what's next? We have 11 projects of those 55 that have already visited, 12 now after the one we had yesterday. If about 6 or 7 of those decide to choose Forsyth County as home, we are about out of locations to be able to put new businesses to come to our community. So we've got to be starting to think ahead when it comes to available land opportunities for what's next, what's on the horizon. We've been able to do work with Kyle Haney and his team, as well as Aaron King and now Chris Murphy at the Planning Zoning, as well as Courtney Driver at Utilities, to identify some potential opportunity of new land, as Laura mentioned, that could be opened up for development that is currently in a sewer basin. We applied through the ARPA funding for maybe a lift station. I know that wasn't a fit for the ARPA funding, but it's something that we'd like to consider going forward, of looking at how can the county be a leader in that investment in infrastructure to open up more developable land to bring to the tax rolls and the tax base. Smith-Reynolds Airport. Mr. Vice Chair, you mentioned the announcement yesterday. We are also a co-host with our partners in the region for a major aerospace conference that's happening at PTI in May. We're just working with Mark Davidson today about scheduling attendance and messaging for that. We've been able to present Smith-Reynolds Airport for a few projects, as Laura mentioned. We've been able to stay in touch with UPS Flight Forward, who's now operating their drone. Just finished their 10,000th flight on their drones. Pretty remarkable feat that they've been able to accomplish. And we also know that through the state budget, there's been some dollars set aside for infrastructure, new hangars, and some really exciting new opportunities at Smith-Reynolds Airport. We'll be attending the meeting in March, I believe it's the 15th, and we'll be continuing our Aerotropolis Task Force work going forward and investing in the future of Smith-Reynolds Airport as one of our key leading drivers. And then as we look going forward, how do we extend our message? We see that the work that we're doing through our initiatives and efforts are bringing back a return on investment. And we've got individuals and companies in this pipeline to have more economic growth. So how do we maximize and be more effective and efficient in our messaging? We haven't been able to travel and go knock on doors and make even more leads. We've been adapting. How does IQ2 phase tie into the future of biotech and life sciences? How does the distribution facilities that are coming online rapidly affect our opportunity to engage and recruit new companies as well? These are all things that we're studying and looking into and partnering with Kyle and his new team and his department to be able to really maximize the work that we're doing. So I'd like to end by saying I'm happy to answer questions, but we appreciate your your trust in us, your commitment to our organization, commitment to the citizens of Forsyth County, so that these jobs and investment numbers help provide tax dollars that increase programming, but they also add 500 new jobs to our community that can really help change lives and open up new economic mobility opportunities. So all in all, even though we've been through the challenges of 2021, a really successful year one for Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., we're excited about what's coming next. Mr. Vice
Questions
Chair,
for
that's
Mark?
our report.
One question, Mr. Vice Chair. Mark, first, thank you for the report.
Yes, sir.
I know you haven't been here a long time, but once upon a time, there was some discussion to have an industrial park on 40 off Lowry Street in East Winston community. Have you heard of any interest being expressed in developing some kind of site over there for manufacturing purposes or future development of any sort?
Commissioner, we have not spoken with a specific developer about that site directly, but many of the developers that we have looked at, including some companies from out of state, out of town, who are developing in the Kernersville area, are merging down 40 and Salem Parkway even closer. I do think it's just a great opportunity to look at that corridor for distribution, light manufacturing. We are out of space at Union Cross Business Park.
Right.
Developers, we have identified new sites through City County Planning Department to look at that. I can't remember if that site, Mr. Commissioner, was one of those. I will get back to you and confirm that. But we are looking to identify specifically on 40 in the eastern part of our county and East Winston opportunities for job growth. I do know south of Winston-Salem, we also have some opportunities there that we just got commitment, I believe, this morning that we can list a building available as well. So where those companies are looking to build production facilities or manufacturing are starting to spread out across the county a little bit more. We have now some product in the south. We on the Kernersville side, Union Cross side, we have product, and then Tanglewood on the western side of the county. And then we are looking north as the Beltway continues its process to add more land. But I'll check on that site specifically for you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? I have one, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Just thinking about the battery, the Toyota battery plant and the boom super, sonic transport, planes that they're going to need to be a whole lot of suppliers that I think will follow that. Do you have sort of a team that's sort of focusing on because there's two or three things, obviously what you're working on now, which are sites and inventory and buildings, which you need to have something for them and a place to show them. But the other part is sort of the targeted, it's simultaneously the people for the things we do have that are likely to be the suppliers and likely to be, because we are in a perfect position for that with both the Salem Parkway extended out running into 40 to get to that site is close.
Yes, sir.
Particularly the boom site.
And I really appreciate you asking that question. We do have a Director of Economic Recruitment, Ellis Kiefer, who is making external calls. We are identifying suppliers. We are learning those as we go. I'll share just a quick project that came in a week after the Toyota announcement for the electric battery plant, which I believe will just be the start of the announcements as we've been hearing there. Within a week, we had a project of a supplier for that plant that wanted to be further than 20 miles away, but not more than an hour. They didn't want to compete with the labor market, but they wanted to be able to supply quickly. We are a prime location for that. I mean, if you draw a radius, we may be one of only two options for this company. So we are identifying that. My background coming from where BMW manufacturing was and being there for almost 10 years, we're in that spot, and sweet spot as a region, to really benefit from these regional projects. Project Boom, even more so, being closer to us, which will be really helpful. Our aerospace side will be very intentional about where we're going to recruit there. I believe that what we have an advantage on as general aviation is the ability to run testing flights and test products here that is not as trafficked as the commercial airport at PTI. But we've been in constant conversation. Obviously, there's members of our community of the PTI board. It's going to be very advantageous. The difference about Project Boom is it's a prototype. It hasn't been made yet. I would imagine it's going to take a while to get that made and get going, but that infrastructure is there. Suppliers will be there, and our distribution through our interstate highways is very prime for our opportunity to grow, which is why we need to look on the eastern side of our county and look at other sites that have the accessibility to 52 to 40 and getting to 85 as quickly as possible. those are prime opportunities for us to grow.
Good. And I would like to say one other thing. I appreciated your letter to the editor in the Journal, basically both explaining and reminding folks of the business support for the quarter-cent sales tax, which was great, the importance of both rewarding and paying our teachers to prepare our students to actually be the workforce for these jobs that are out there. And I thought it was a very positive and important kind of piece. And I'm really glad that you took time to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I think sometimes it's good for us to remember it all ties together, and it takes every piece of that pie to create the success that we want to have, that we are having in our community. And it's a good time to get behind our teachers, our superintendent, and behind our local businesses. And all of that coming together makes a better place for our families and our young people to grow and live. Thank you for that.
Good. It was a great annual report, and I'm sure folks will be looking forward to this time next year for a second annual report, and hopefully it'll be another banner year. Any final comments that someone would like to, or questions for Mark?
Just one comment, Mr. Vice Chair. Mark, the multiplier effect of the boom right next door to us should be substantial in Forsyth County. Maybe with the next report, you can give us some anticipated numbers.
Sure. We'll be happy to look into that and talk with the company to understand their timeline a little more closely so those can be accurate numbers for you. And I believe you're going to see us very soon, much sooner than a year from now, with some other opportunities. So we look forward to presenting those to you as well.
Okay.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Laura, for joining.
All righty. Next, we have for a Utility Commission update, we have Courtney Driver, the director, and I think she's also going to talk a little bit about the sort of infrastructure economic development fund that the Utilities Commission has too. I think she's going to do both.
Mr. Vice Chairman, if possible, I believe that Jeff Lindsay is back on the line just to make a few comments around the impacts on the hospital around COVID. So, Jeff, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Very good.
Would you like me to start?
Yeah, we are ready.
Please do, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, my apologies for the complete technology failure that kept me from participating by video. Our tech people are working on resolving that. But just a few comments on how the hospitals are faring. Currently, we have 167 patients at Forsyth Medical Center and 30 at Kernersville. That is fully half of Kernersville's entire capacity. They have 60 beds in total. So that is the Forsyth County impact of COVID right now at the moment. From a trending perspective in terms of positive cases, we are seeing in Forsyth County roughly 50% of all tests are positive, which is just a massive amount of community spread. We typically want to see that number under 5% of tests. And before this current phase, we were maintaining that 5% level over time fairly reliably, but that number has skyrocketed. And a couple of other key points about our hospitalizations. I'd like to draw a distinction between patients who are vaccinated with 2 doses and patients who are fully vaccinated, and we consider fully vaccinated as having the complete up to and including the booster. So for patients who have 2 vaccinations but not the booster, our hospitalizations, we're seeing 23% of our hospitalizations are patients who have 2 vaccines but no booster. When we add the booster in, it's only 6% of our hospitalizations. And that's a similar number for patients in the ICU and patients on a ventilator. 18% of our patients on a ventilator are vaccinated with 2 doses, and only 8% of our ventilator patients in the ICU have booster. And once a patient progresses to the ventilated stage, it's a 50-50 chance as to whether they will survive and come off mechanical ventilation or not. So that's what we're seeing at the hospital. Our emergency departments are very busy, although stable in that we're not seeing continued increases in cases. That's the case in our inpatient admissions as well as the emergency department. So very busy. We currently have about a 3.5-hour wait from the time the patient walks in the door until we can get to them with a plan in terms of whether they'll be released, admitted, kept for observation. So lots of backups there. That's partly driven by patients being transferred in from surrounding counties where smaller hospitals have become somewhat overwhelmed. We typically see 15 to 20 of those transfers on any given day from outlying counties, and right now we're seeing more like 40 to 50 a day. We're also, of course, taking patients who might normally be seen at Kernersville Medical Center, because Kernersville is now pulling patients in from Guilford County, which is kind of overwhelming that facility. So at Forsyth Medical Center, we're doing our best to try to keep those patients getting care where we can best provide that, and that is where we have the most capacity. I would like to highlight our Haynes Mall vaccination site celebrated its 1-year anniversary yesterday. We've given over 108,000 vaccine doses there, and we've been privileged to have almost 2,000 volunteers from the community who have come out to help us there. There's also been a huge impact on our team members, our people. Across all of Novant, we currently have 1,100 team members out with COVID. 200 of those are in Winston-Salem, and about half of those are direct caregivers at the bedside. So that's having a significant impact on our ability to provide care, having that many team members out. 92.5% of our team members are vaccinated, but even our vaccinated team members are in some cases becoming exposed and not getting very sick, but needing to be out for 5 to 7 days. And I would say, I'm sure Jonathan and the folks from the health department mentioned this earlier, but Joshua, sorry. The message we have for our community is get boosted and wear a mask. Our team is exhausted, worn out, tired of being heroes. That they want people to do the right thing. And I speak for my colleagues at Atrium Wake Forest in sharing these comments and the general situation for our hospitals, that we have within our capability the ability to, and the tools that we need to address this. And that is the message we have for the community and the public. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Jeff Lindsay?
Vice Chairman, I do have a question. Mr. Lindsay, this is Commissioner Tanya McDaniel. In your report, thank you so very much for being here. In your report, you talked about those individuals that had two doses and that were fully vaccinated. So with the calculation, it appears that possibly there's about 21% of those that are 50% in your hospitals not vaccinated. Did I get that?
Well, yeah, I don't. Hold on, let me pull that up. For fully vaccinated, meaning they've had a booster, only 6% of our hospitalizations are vaccinated, and the remaining 94% are unvaccinated.
Okay, fair enough. All right. And then my other question, it may be a little trivial, but I'm not quite sure because I work in healthcare, but I don't do the direct care. But for the variants that are on the horizon, the Omicron that's on the horizon right now, there's no specific testing for that. So we know that there's tested for the COVID-19, but how do you distinguish whether a person has that particular Omicron, or do they have COVID, or are they both the same?
Well, they are all COVID-19 types of viruses,
Okay.
and we're quite limited in our ability to be able to test for the specific variant, whether
Okay.
it's Delta or Omicron or another variant. We are participating in a study with the University of North Carolina Healthcare, where we're sending samples of our test results to them for further analysis, and we're finding that almost all infections are of the Omicron variant. So
Okay.
nationally, that number is 99%, and we don't find it to be any different in Forsyth County.
And I would assume, and this is my last question, sir, I would assume that the treatment for that is the same that you would for the COVID.
That's correct. And Omicron infections, particularly if you're vaccinated and boosted, tend to be less severe. It's more like can be like a very difficult head cold or common cold. But as you can see, with only 6% of our patients in the hospital were vaccinated, you're much less likely to be hospitalized, put in the ICU, or on mechanical ventilation if you've been vaccinated and boosted. So in which case you have if you do contract it, which is very possible, you have a fairly mild course and something that's quite manageable. And our team members, we see them being out 5 to 7 days. Most of them are not terribly ill, but they are infectious. So that's really the impact that the vaccines and boosting has for patients who get the Omicron variant.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lindsay. That was helpful.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff?
2 quick questions, Mr. Vice Chair. Can you hear me okay, Jeff? I'm speaking through a mask.
I can, yeah, thank you for doing that, and I can hear you.
Okay, then. There was one discrepancy I was concerned about. Our public health director mentioned there were 75 hospitalizations. You mentioned a number of 167. Did I understand you correctly to say it was 167 patient beds occupied with COVID patients?
Between Forsyth Medical Center and Kernersville Medical Center, that does not, that doesn't include patients at Atrium, Wake Forest, or other facilities.
Okay.
That is our number, our number at Novant Health as of today.
Okay.
And I think Joshua's number
sorry, I
were
didn't hear
people
the
who
number.
live in Forsyth
Winston-Salem,
of
right.
that number.
Yeah, that's
So
what he said.
obviously Novant serving people outside.
But
In
not
fact, I
much
think, Jeff, if I heard you correctly, a number of some Guilford folks are actually spilling over into your Kernersville beds.
Yeah. And I had a follow-up question too, Jeff.
Guilford, Surrey County, Stokes County, yeah, from lots of surrounding counties as well. So that would be part of the discrepancy.
Okay. And the final question, I saw somewhat of a disturbing news report of a young man who needed surgery, but he refused to be vaccinated, which was a hospital policy. And so the hospital, of course, decided not to do the operation. Do we have any kind of policy in Forsyth County to that effect? If you want surgery, you have to have vaccinations and the booster?
No, we do not. We take care of patients whether they're vaccinated or not. I will say for surgical patients, we do test before their surgical procedure. And if they are positive for COVID, we may or may not elect to perform the procedure at that time. If it's not time sensitive or life threatening, we might reschedule it for 10 days into the future. Or in some cases, if it is life threatening or time sensitive, we just have to double up on our personal protective equipment for our clinical staff, and we do that surgery anyway. And we do those surgeries whether patients are vaccinated or not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Any other questions? Jeff, thank you very much for joining us, and appreciate your patience with getting all the technology. I know how frustrating that can be, but we appreciate you being with us today and talking some about that direct impact at the hospital level, which is kind of becoming the metric that we need to be the most concerned about.
Agreed completely, and it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. All righty, we're on our third report with Courtney. Courtney Driver from the Director of the Utilities Commission, and she is here in person. Thank you, Courtney.
Sorry, let me figure out how to, there it is. I couldn't see it because of the boxes in my way. Okay, good afternoon, Chairman Plyler, Vice Chair Martin, and County Commissioners. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I actually want to start by commenting on something Mark said earlier. I really appreciate what he said about we're all part of we are all pieces of a larger puzzle, and we have to work together to make this community a good place for our families to live, work, and play. So I really appreciate that, Mark, and appreciate our partnership. I'm going to give my biannual update for the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities. And I'm going to start with an overview. As you know, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities is a joint department between the City of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. It's governed by a utility commission that's called the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utility Commission, and the members are appointed by both. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay. It's hard to tell if I have a mask on. It's appointed by the Winston-Salem City Council and the Forsyth County Commissioners. The department is made up of 6 different divisions consisting of administration, water treatment, wastewater treatment, solid waste disposal, utilities, field operation, and meter services. Altogether, it's about 390 employees. As I said, it's a joint agency governed by the Utility Commission, and it was formed by the merger of the city and county water systems in 1976, and in 1990, the solid waste disposal services was added to the responsibility. It is an enterprise fund, which means it's not funded by local taxes. It's funded by the water and sewer fees that you pay or the tipping fees that you pay at the landfill. A couple of things I want to mention. We have right now 72 departmental vacancies. It's, I guess, kind of common right now where a lot of industries are struggling with hiring retaining employees. 72 vacancies out of 390 budgeted positions is an 18% vacancy rate. The majority of those are equipment operators. We're having an extremely hard time getting equipment operators, which is a big piece of our department. We have hiring campaigns. We're looking at pay. We're looking at hiring bonuses. Just trying to be creative to figure out how to recruit and retain employees. As a result of our vacancies, we did have to temporarily close Old Salisbury Road landfill, which is our construction and demolition landfill. We just do not have enough operators to operate our both sites. The construction and demolition waste that you take to Old Salisbury Road can be received at Haynes Mill, so we do have another option, but it is a temporary inconvenience, I'm sure, for our community. It's closed through February 25th, at which time we're going to reevaluate our staffing levels and hopefully can reopen it at that time. We obviously are still seeing impacts from COVID, so there are programs. We're partnering with different agencies to provide financial assistance for water and sewer customers that are in need. There's the low-income housing water assistance program, the emergency rental assistance program, and the rent utility mortgage assistance program. So those are 3 of the programs that are out there. Some financial updates. Delinquent accounts. This is for May of 2020 through December, end of the year. You can see we hit a peak with delinquent accounts around 18,000 in December of 2020. And we started to make some headway and saw a decrease. And since June of last year, June 2020, we're starting to see a slow increase up, not as drastic as it was, but still starting to see it tick back up. I'm not really sure what's causing that, but we are definitely monitoring that. Same thing with the past due balance history. Again, we saw a peak in October of 2020 with our past due balance. Had a decline and then showing a slight increase again since June of last year in 2021. So we're at about a $3.9 million past due balance history right now. Normally you're going to have, it's normal to have some past due balance, but it's obviously a lot higher than it was pre-COVID.
Courtney, if I may, so for the past due balances, are some of the service constituents, do they know that there's help through Health and Human Services? Are they being told that?
Yeah, I hope so. We are definitely trying to market. We've put information out on our website, through social media. I know that the Department of Health and Human Services is also trying to market that. So we're trying to get the word out. And definitely if they call into CityLink or our call center, we're sharing that information as well.
Okay, thank you.
That was kind of my question too. I'm just trying to think about process issues, and I'm thinking about folks that may be experiencing delinquencies and past due balances. And I think a lot of times I think what Commissioner McDaniel is getting at is that connecting. It's connecting people to the help that there's a lot of, that your item above, the third item, all those letter abbreviation help things, there's a lot of help there.
Yes.
But it's getting people connected to it. And I appreciate the reference to the websites available and whatever else, but maybe some of these folks need to be contacted and some kind of more direct way, which looks like it looks like a small investment on the end of collections, that not in a like a collection agency, but somebody to help, a connector. Spending some money there would actually remove, it would reduce your delinquencies in more than what you spend to do it. And then you would have people in a lot better, you're also teaching folks how to access those, because it looks like they're going to be around for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. That's an excellent
I mean, the
point.
money.
Yes,
I look at the
yes.
money's going to have a lifetime of 2 or 3 years.
Yes, that's an excellent point, and we can always, we always need to try to communicate and do better. Like you mentioned, everybody doesn't look at the website, everybody doesn't have social media, so you have to figure out different avenues. Putting it in our delinquent account or delinquent letters that our customers receive. There's all different kind of options, and we can continue to look at that very thing, so thank you.
Good, thank you.
So water and wastewater revenues this fiscal year, you can see the blue shaded, the light blue is our budget for 2022. The blue bar is our actual received for 2022, and then the red bar is from last year, so the actual from 2021. We're a little behind on our revenues for the last 2 months, but again, we're watching that and monitoring that. Still above the budget, or right at the budget, so we're in pretty good shape. Solid waste revenues, again, the same color coding. The budget, the actual revenues that we've received on solid waste are above the budget and above last year, so we're doing well on the solid waste side. Capital improvement projects, we have a very intensive capital improvement program. We put a lot of funding into investing in our infrastructure. We want to make sure that we maintain the infrastructure that we have for our community to be able to provide the critical services that we do. But I'm not going to go through all those, but I have 4 that I want to just go over with you today. The first one is our Nielsen Water Treatment Plant. Nielsen is a water treatment plant in Clemens. It is a 48 million gallon a day conventional treatment water plant. It's our largest plant in our water system. It receives raw water from Yadkin River, and it began operation in 1964. It did have an addition that was built in 1980. Really hasn't been renovated or rehabbed, either one of those facilities since those times. So it's in need of a overhaul. So we're working on that right now. The approved budget for that project is right at $122 million, so it is a significant lift for us. The design, bidding, and construction administration services is right at $12 million. And then the construction contract, it came in right at $107.5 million. The notice to proceed was in September of 2021, and the final completion date is estimated to be in May of 2025. So it is a long time span, primarily because we have to keep that plant in service to serve the community. So we have to break up the construction and the renovation in phases. But that project will address aging facilities, process improvements, obsolete and failing equipment, provide redundancy and reliability, and of course we're going to address any workplace safety and operational improvements that we need to. The picture here is from the original plant in 1960. So I don't know if you can see it, but the cars look pretty cool.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Does that end up creating more capacity at all when you're through with this project?
This is not an additional capacity project. This is strictly renovation, rehabilitation for this plant.
How about in terms of efficiency? I would think, how about efficiency and technology so that the number of people it takes to operate the plant actually is fewer?
Yes, so we're required under our permit and to have so many operators at the plant. So that won't change. I mean, it's a 24/7 operation, so we always have somebody there all the time. You are absolutely right that we will have better efficiency, there's better technology, there's better reliability. So we will gain all those with this project, just not additional capacity. It'll still be rated at a 48 million gallon a day plant.
Okay, thank you.
And then here's just an aerial view that the contractor took at the beginning of the project. It's from the back of the plant, so you're looking at the back of the site. The next project is our advanced metering infrastructure project. This is where we'll be able to read our meters remotely through a network. It will consist of replacing 130,000 water meters and adding new radio endpoints. It will also rehabilitation of the distribution system infrastructure to our current standards. There'll be installation of maintenance of the radio network for 20 years, and we'll also have a WaterSmart customer portal where our customers will be able to log in to this portal and monitor their water usage, be able to identify if they have any leaks, instead of having to wait 60 days till they get their bill. So it'll be definitely more customer friendly.
I have a curiosity question.
Yeah.
How much does a water meter cost? One.
So right now we charge $60 for an actual water meter. And with the new technology, they will go up, but I don't know that it'll be that significant. I don't have the exact price, but I can get that information for you.
Thank you. It's interesting.
Is this map going to be the penetration of how much how the progress on installing those meters?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So we did what we called an alpha area, and I don't know if you can see it here, but it's kind of right in where downtown's at. It's near our meter services area. It's called alpha. It's like our pilot project. We started there. And then we're currently in the beta area, and the beta area is about 10,000 meters. We started in these two areas because it's on the southeast and southwestern side of the county, and those two areas are harder to read manually. They're one of our more problematic areas. They're also in two different jurisdictions, so that gives us a good idea of the existing conditions and what we will be facing in the full deployment. We have about 400 meters left to replace in these two areas. And then we'll be moving to our gamma area, which is the pink reddish color. And there's about 34,000 meters to replace in those areas. The next two projects I'm going to go or discuss are sewer rehabilitation projects, and they were born out of our collection system improvement program. We have around 1,800 miles of sewer pipe in our system. And so we have a program to really look at all 1,800 miles, assess the condition, see what needs to be cleaned, see what needs to be rehabilitated. And so the next two projects were developed out of that. This one is in Kernersville, and the contract amount is right at $3 million. We've spent about $2.8 million to date. The notice to proceed was in August of 2020, and then the final completion date is expected to be in March of 2022. So far, we've rehabbed 25,000 linear feet of sewer line in this area. And here's a progress map that shows the area we've been working in. And we certainly appreciate the patience of the community, of the people who live in this area, because I know that sometimes that can be frustrating when you're dealing with construction.
Can I go back to the meters for a second? When do you expect that automated meter reading, if you will, to actually be complete?
So we started about 2 years ago, and it was going to be a 3 to 5 year project. We are having some supply chain issues right now that are slowing things down, but we do feel that we'll be finished or we hope to be finished, 2024, 25 timeframe with the entire system, with replacing all 130,000 meters.
And I remember when you discussed this last year. So your anticipated reduction in staff on that, because you don't need meter readers now on those areas. So what does that sort of look like as you begin to project forward? Are you already experiencing that now in the areas you got?
Vice Chair, we did a full return on investment kind of business case when we looked at this project. As far as reduction in staff, there won't be necessarily reduction in staff. We will repurpose meter readers to do other types of position, and we will probably have some, just through natural attrition, where, we may not fill a meter reader position, it would go away, but we'd change them into someone that analyzes the data. We might have to repurpose it into some other position. There are savings in other areas where, and that's a full presentation that I can give you if you're interested. But there's savings on replacing the meters because the current meters are running slowly right now. There's efficiencies gained because we're not rolling trucks every day and things like that. There's customer service benefits where you identify a leak before 60 days before you get your bill. So there's a whole list of benefits to this program that were evaluated before we decided to move forward.
Okay, thanks.
So the last project I'll discuss is our system-wide sewer rehabilitation phase 3. Again, this contract was around $3.3 million. We spent roughly around $600,000. About a year-long project. 3 of the 7 project sites have been completed, and we're working on the High Point Road area. And again, this is just an overall map with the stars. It shows the areas that we'll be in. But we plan to do a lot of sewer rehab work within the entire county over the next several years, just to make sure that we're looking and touching, all 1,800 miles of our system, collection system. And that's all I've got for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are you going to cover the economic development sort of fund piece too?
Yes, I don't have the numbers with me, but I know I sent, I shared a memo with Ms. Sloop, and the balance as of June 30th, 2021 was $3,549,528.95. The contributions to the fund over the last year were $96,982.61. And the balance, not over the last year, over the last 6 months. And then the balance as of December 31st, 2021 is $3,646,511.56. And this fund is generated by a rate differential that's charged our outside county customers, and that those additional funds go into this economic development funds for the city and the county to use on economic development projects.
Good. I found this at my place. Does everybody have one of these? It looks like I have a bunch of stapled together ones that look all the same.
Yeah, it's a one-pager.
It's a one-pager, but I have, looks like
Multiple
7
copies.
copies of the same page.
I think it was copied thinking it was it was multiple pages. So
Doesn't matter.
anyway.
Okay. Just want to make sure I wasn't responsible for passing them out. Okay, good. Any questions for Courtney? Any other questions?
One brief question, Mr. Vice Chair. When the employees leave in such great numbers, are you able to do an exit survey of any sort?
Yeah, so our, Commissioner, our HR department handles those exit surveys, I'm sure, somewhat similar to what happens here at the county. Right now, our issue has always been competition with private sectors. And so that's something we struggle with, and we'll have to continue to be creative of how to keep employees, wanting to work with the government. So.
I would like to make one comment, Courtney. You do this every year, and it's always professional. It's always right on the spot, and it's understandable. And I appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank
We're
you.
lucky to have you.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments?
One brief question, Mr. Vice Chair. The community that I live in has another water supplier called Carolina Water, because that used to be in the county and it was annexed into the city a few years before I moved in that community. What kind of impact does Carolina Water have on our system? Is it a competitor or just an incidental?
So I wouldn't say it's a competitor per se. It's just they are supplying the water in that area. and there's a couple other little, private water suppliers or utilities throughout the county. We serve the majority of the county, but there are some other utilities sprinkled in throughout the county that do provide service. And in our industry, it's all about who can supply the water or the wastewater service the most economically and conveniently. And, we have to look at basins and where you get the water and how you get it there. And so sometimes it makes sense to go with this utility, and then this location may be better served by a different utility.
Good. Hearing no more questions, Courtney, thank you very much for your report. And I guess we'll see you another 6 months or so, is that right?
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Unless you need me to report on anything else before then, I'd be happy to.
Hopefully those numbers will be down by next month.
All right, next we have our fourth report, which is the Partners Quarterly Report, and we have with us Jackie Copeland, who is the Regional Director of Community Operations. And while Jackie's coming up, I'll say I've had 2 occasions to email him, and he is very prompt, same-day response, very thorough. Appreciate the work our inaugural getting started and the transition over to Partners has gone, at least appears to be fairly smoothly, which is good, and we're happy to hear your report today.
Thank you. I may need a little assistance in getting my presentation pulled up. As soon as
I don't have a handout, do we? Don't have a handout.
And good afternoon to the county commissioners. Thank you again for having me here on behalf of Partners. Again, as Vice Chair said, my name is Jackie Copeland, the Regional Director for Community Operations for Partners. And I'll get right to sharing you what the progress has been so far. Partners started on November 1st, as you all know, providing services for Forsyth County. With that focus, we've now found that we're on day 86 providing services through our provider network for the county. We're less than 3 months into our overall operation. During that period of time, we had a very clear mission. As you recall, when the county had went to the Secretary of Health and Human Services and asked that we begin January 1st, 2022. But the Secretary, because of the conditions with the prior LME MCO, asked us to expedite that timetable. We had to really triage and really focus on what were the most important things so we can bring things online. And that was continuity of care. That's been our focus in these 80-some-odd days, really focus on making sure that members and their families have the services that they had on November 1 moving forward. And so with that, we'll get into a little bit of the numbers served. As you see here before you, of Medicaid members, we have our populations we're going to put out on two groups. One is the Medicaid members. The other is the state-funded, the uninsured recipients in those pots. The state kind of identifies it that based off funding source, so we kind of go with that. And so with that, you'll see that in the months of November of 2021, we had just over 2,000 members served. And then in December, over 1,500 members served. You'll see the asterisks there, and I want to point those out. We kind of base these numbers off paid claims. That's when a member has came in and received a service, and the provider submitted a claim to us, and we paid that claim. We feel that's the most direct way to get an idea of how many have been actually served, because a paid claim had to be administered for that. One thing with these numbers is we also operate on what's called a lag time. All outpatient providers have up to 3 months to submit a claim in. So it's a little bit of a lag, and we're still in that lag period, but we try to capture those paid claims as they come in. And these numbers will improve. These numbers actually were pulled on January 10th. And I kind of took a peek at the numbers moving forward for today. and we're definitely seeing increases in numbers. That 1,512 number, it's up to 2,000 as we speak. So we start to see increasing as we go forward with that. And on the state funded side, those are received. They are a little different in the state's eyes. They are not members; they're recipients. These are folks who they are either uninsured or fall into one of the state funding categories that they can receive. The state will pay for services for them. In that regard, we're looking at November, almost 600 recipients received services, and in December, 456 recipients received services. Those numbers too are up. Today I looked at around 600. So as we receive those paid claims in, that number will go up more and more, especially once we get past 90 days of service.
I have a question, and I hate to get ahead of your presentation. I just need it for myself to just ensure that we're not missing anyone. So when I see a decline, I wanted to ensure that although we're serving, is there anybody in the pipeline that is requesting service, and if there's pending services, are you going to?
Yes, I don't have those numbers before you, but you're correct. We have also authorizations that have been submitted. Those are when a person goes to a provider, they submit an authorization. Let me take this mask off. That may be helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that. Hopefully that's a little clearer. They submit a authorization, and at that point in time, we will pay for that service once it's rendered. And so so those numbers will maybe a little higher, because a lot of times you may have a member recipient, they have an appointment, authorization put in place, but they may not follow through with that appointment. So there's a little difference in the numbers.
So how are you following up on that decline or those individuals that's pending?
We work with the providers to identify those so some may consider no-shows, to work on how we can re-engage those members. We do that through our provider network, and we have various mechanisms there to try to, one, do outreach so we can get those folks in, make sure that we can eliminate barriers if possible, because as we know, there are various social determinants of health, those barriers like transportation, that may be a barrier for them to get in. So we work with that. One thing we've done during the pandemic, we're still in unfortunately, is we've increased the use of telehealth in a way to really decrease that barrier. A few years, I really am surprised, I'm saying this, I've been in this system quite a while now, and to think that we would do things such as make sure people have access to a smartphone. We've found that that's went very well because people can get on the phone and are comfortable and willing to have an assessment or have an individual session. So it's really one of the, I hate to say silver linings of the pandemic, is that we've now embraced telehealth on a whole new level on the behavioral health side that we thought we wouldn't be looking at for years down the road.
Sure. Yeah, just in the future, I probably would like to see those individuals that's still pending and waiting.
Okay.
But thank you.
We'll do that. Thank you. I'll add that correct to our next update. Another key element that we were looked at that was key to continuity of care was just making sure we had prioritized the providers that be in place. With the transition between organizations, we were able to identify those key providers out there who were providing services, and we wanted to make sure that on November 1st, there were contracts in place so we could continue, one, to pay for services that they may render, and then diminish any kind of interruptions for members and families. So with that, last time I came to present to you in November, I think it was, we were shy of less than 10 providers who hadn't signed contracts yet. We have got all those signed and they're in place providing services. And what we're also doing is also looking at what are the gaps in services so we can begin filling those by bringing in new providers or asking providers to expand some of their capacity to be able to meet those gaps. Every year we have to do we do as a good best practice, a community needs gap assessment, looking at all what the needs are throughout the communities. And with that, then develop a report where we can then guide our planning of how do we look at expansion in our provider network. And what are some areas where maybe some utilization going on, and how can we spread that out? So we're in the process now, since again, we were asked to start service sooner. We're focusing on the prioritized providers, but we are also looking at what are the gaps in the community that we need to fill. I want to take a little bit of time, talk about some other things that we're doing that have a direct impact on services. Talk a little bit about Partners Community Model. One of the things that Partners is known for throughout the state is this community model, which simply put it, we have an unwavering support and commitment to our counties, our members, and their families. And with that, we believe to truly be part of, serve the community, we need to be part of the community. So the next few slides will talk a little bit more about some of the things that we have been doing with our team to try to engage the community. And part of that community participation is that we have been putting on various types of, you start seeing the member and community cafes, opportunities that the community can learn about partners. We can hear from the community and be able to, as I said earlier, look at identifying gaps and needs in our community and any barriers that take place and try to identify them and rectify them as soon as possible. I won't talk about all these things, but I wanted to kind of point out two other areas of your attention is trainings and webinars. We've had over 27 trainings and webinars on various topics for members, families, other community stakeholders, just our way of providing education to the community on topics that they have identified they want to hear about, learn more about. And so that's one area we're really focused in on. And the other item I want to bring your attention to is we've been working with the Forsyth Mental Health, Substance Use, and IDD, Intellectual Development Disabilities Advisory Committees. We've been working with them prior to, we started engaging with them as part of the realignment, but we started this past month working with them in regards to some of our partners' commitment to work with those groups. There are boards that you all have put in place, is that we serve as kind of their staff, helping them once they identify their agenda and making sure it's distributed to their members. Also, we've committed staff to take their minutes. They've said in the past they would prefer if the MCO do that. It just helps relieve them up for their discussion, what have you. And then also, we've made a commitment to have someone, not just someone there, but have a leadership position there with them so that if they have questions, we'll be able to respond to them. At the same time, we'll be able to share different ideas and issues that are going on locally and in the state. It's kind of our way of developing that direct communication, the opportunity to really have a true input with us. Those are some of the key things in regard to community participation that I want to share with you. And upcoming events, we have various events. Again, I talked about the member cafe and the community cafes that go on a monthly basis. We have our next quarterly provider forum coming up on March 9th. This opportunity for any provider within our network to participate. And even those who may be interested, they have opportunity to listen in what's going on, where we talk about what are the key issues providers are faced, what are the needs that we have in Forsyth County, and also to identify any barriers they may be having to what's going on. And then the last one I'll mention in this slide is our community collaborative. Community collaboratives, we have got those up and running. They're groups that meet with various stakeholders in the community on specific issues. A little background on community collaboratives in the state of North Carolina really took off in the last few years is they were part of our system of care initiative, statewide, looking at how families can be the drivers of their care, how we get that voice and that leads to decisions and bring other community folks around them to partner with them. It was aimed mostly at youth and their families. Partner has took a different stance than some of the other peers have. I think only one other managed care organization is doing this. We look at it not only just for youth, but also adults. When this initiative started, and some of the adults members would say, wait a minute, what about the adults? So we just took it upon ourselves to make a decision then that these collaboratives would focus on youth and family issues along with adult issues, because there are various needs that those populations need. Communication and outreach, as you can imagine, we have to share with the community who partners this and hear from the community what their needs are. So we've had these various outreach activities going on to kind of make that connection. One thing I wanted to point out on this slide is the social media outreach. We have really ramped up some of the social media communication because it's a great opportunity not just to learn about partners, but we can share information about various initiatives that are going on to members and other community stakeholders. And also, they can share certain items that seem appropriate for us to share. We also can put that out there. It's a great way to directly connect with our members. It's amazing, as you all know, a lot of folks either on Facebook or Instagram, and that whole piece. And then even with LinkedIn, we're using LinkedIn. We've heard other presenters talk about the struggle with finding workers and talent. We've used that too as a way of recruitment also, as other industries do. And in conclusion, I hope I've conveyed the fact that partners, that we are trying to be proactive in our approach to serve Forsyth County, and also we want to be collaborative. We want to work with the other community organizations, members, families, stakeholders, even the county government departments, work collaboratively with them to be able to address the needs in our community and really remove barriers. Again, this hits our mantra, improving lives and strengthening community, and that's our focus here in Forsyth County, to improve lives and strengthen overall community. As I wrap this up, some important contact. We have we call our Hope Line. It's our call center. It's up and staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, receiving calls from members, even providers, community people interested, handling crisis or just routine appointments. It's there and available. It's even served as a little bit of after hours when members want to call and talk to someone. We have clinical staff available to work with them just to kind of stabilize them and hopefully get them into a provider for services. And then we have our member engagement team, and they focus on is that contact for members and families, a team of people that they can call or get this number or send an email, answering questions they may have. If they're facing certain issues or challenges, a way they can call and get some resolution at those issues. And then also myself, I work closely with Robinson and the county staff and other stakeholders. So of course, my contact information also, as Dr. Martin mentioned earlier, he reached out to me about an issue, and we tried to resolve that as quickly as we can. With that being said, are there any questions that the commissioners have?
Questions for Jackie?
One comment, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Copeland, I'm glad to see you're part of JCPC. I've been working with them for about 5 years, and we need your professional assistance.
Looking forward to serving.
Especially for the youth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Vice Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Copeland, for your presentation today. It was very informational, and I appreciate it. I know that you guys are doing really great work, and I hear the commitment. I'm always going to think about the most marginalized, right? So you talked about your training and your webinars, but I'm thinking about those individuals that may not have a computer. You know, how are you accessing them? And I would kind of like to see what those numbers look like. It's good to tell me, but is it 5 people? Is it 20 people? Is it 200? So I would kind of like to know that in the future. And then the community cafes, what does that look like? Are you actually in the community at a community recreational center, or are they having to come to you? So that's a transportation situation. Are they given a bus pass, or are they given transportation opportunities?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that. At this moment they are virtual just because of the pandemic we're in. We prefer they not be. We prefer they be face-to-face. So that's our plan, to look at how we can partner with other community organizations to bring them in the community. Because you raise a good point about transportation. Even in Winston-Salem and urban county, transportation is still a barrier. So we're going to take those meetings out when, so let's say for time, to the members where they can have them. Our community collaborative, they are very excited and moving forward. They are pushing it for having a face-to-face, and they thought that would be the case, but then as we've heard from other presentations, Omicron kind of increased. So we're hoping to do that. So yes, to answer your question, yes, they're going to be in the community where the community can access them in some of the local places, like you mentioned, rec centers, libraries, those type of places. Before, in our other counties, before Omicron, that's what we focused on having most of our cafes.
And I'm not, giving you a hard time. I just wanted to just kind of think through that in the future. So thank you so very much. The numbers would be great next time as well.
Thank you. I'll take note of that and make those additions to that.
Other questions? If not, Jackie, thank you so much for being with us. I think your first 90 days have gone well, and I think as I think of Commissioner McDaniel's comments and questions and observations, is that, I mean, you're kind of, first of all, trying to take over and serve the group that have been served to get that transition done, and hopefully, as that seems to have gone well, we move more into the strong recruitment. I mean, let's try to make it easier for everybody to get the services they need, because it's again connections. It's a connector between your people need services, but nobody's making the connection. And that's where that outreach is so important. And I appreciate your efforts on the community cafes, but as Commissioner McDaniel says, if you don't have a computer, you're not in a cafe. I mean, it's that kind of issue. So but I think I appreciate your responsiveness and appreciate you being here, and we look forward to your next quarterly report.
All right. Thank you, and thank you again for the questions, suggestions. So we try to be a learning organization, and transparency is a big piece. And so thank you. Just help us to learn and stretch and give the county commissioners what they're looking for, and the county ultimately. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Next, our fifth report, we have the Home and Community Care Block Grant Annual Report. And we have Linda Darden, who is the chair of the Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee, and she'll be joining us online, it appears to be.
Yes.
Later on,
Thank
Linda.
you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you, commissioners, for the time this afternoon to give an update on the work of our group. As you say, I am Linda Darden. I'm president and CEO of Trellis Supportive Care. But more importantly, today I serve as the chair of the Forsyth County Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Council. And the mission of this council is to assure the effective and efficient use of the Home and Community Care Block Grant funds that come into Forsyth County. The services that are allowable under the block grant are intended to provide in-home and community-based services in support of older adults and their unpaid primary caregivers. The functioning of this council is supported by the team at the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, PTRC, which is our area agency on aging. And we did provide a brief annual report from PTRC on services in Forsyth County that has been submitted. I don't know if you have that at the moment, but certainly will come to you shortly. And just so you know, that report covers the funds overseen by our group, our advisory council, as well as other programs that fall under the auspices of PTRC. Under the block grant program, there are 6 agencies in Forsyth County that are funded to serve older adults. Forsyth County Department of Human Services provides in-home aid services. Senior Financial Care provides information and options counseling. Senior Services provides in-home aid services, adult day and adult day health services, congregate nutrition, home delivered meals, information, and options counseling. And in addition, Senior Services is providing administrative support for the adult day program at Mount Zion Senior Life Enrichment Center through a contracted relationship involving block grant funds. The Shepherd Center of Greater Winston-Salem's operations in their senior center are funded, as well as the Shepherd Center in Kernersville, their senior center as well. And then lastly, Winston-Salem Transit Authority, which of course provides transportation services for both medical and general needs. For the 2021 funding year, there was an increase in the number of individuals served and the services provided, primarily due to the receipt of CARES Act funds and other funds that came into the county to address pandemic impacts. So, and this was a greatly needed infusion of funds, I would say. The services that were provided included some of the metrics you see in your annual report. Over 2,900 residents received some sort of in-home aid or adult day programs. 32,000 visits were made in the home. 237,000 meals were served or delivered, and almost 15,000 transportation rides were provided. The funding that was allocated through the Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Council amounted to about $2.4 million, $1.9 million of Home and Community Care Block Grant funds, and a little bit over $500,000 in CARES Act and Families First funds. So the committee addressed not only the normal budgeting and monitoring of those block grant funds, but as additional funding was received or allocated, made decisions about how those additional funds would be distributed in order to best meet the needs of seniors in Forsyth County. Many programs were also impacted by waivers that reflected the difficulty in providing in-person services, and so they were able to have some flexibility in how to provide those services. I can say, speaking for members of the committee, we are truly grateful for all of the funded agencies for their commitment and determination, really, to continue meeting the needs of seniors despite the pandemic impacts. The work that they are doing is very challenging. Social distancing has been a big factor and a lesser factor as the pandemic has wavered. There have been staffing shortages, and at times it's difficult to provide services to clients because of their illnesses or even hospitalizations. We know we've had an ongoing shortage of in-home aides in Forsyth County. In fact, that's a widespread worker shortage area. So there is a waiting list still for much needed in-home aid services. Some agencies have actually had record numbers of requests for services, including things like transportation support. The adult day programs have been slowly rebuilding their participants. They've had extended periods without in-person engagement, but very much know that it's an important service not only for the individuals who participate, but for their families and caregivers as well. So they're trying very hard to rebuild the program enrollment. Some seniors have made shifts in how they make connections, moving from in-person connections to online services. So new service and program options have been created to help combat isolation. However, also recognizing, as was mentioned with the last presenter, that for some individuals, online options are not available or preferred. So traditional programming is still being provided where it can be. And of course, there's still a very strong need for nutritional support with the programs that are offering that congregate nutrition, delivered meals, all kinds of options there. And I will say that these needs are all presenting at a time when many of these agencies have fewer and fewer volunteers available or willing to go out and provide in-person services. So in addition to discussing the services under these that are provided by these partners in our meetings, we also receive and discuss some different updates from other initiatives that are active in the county on behalf of seniors. And that includes the reports from the Ombudsman program, which really provides a point of connection, monitoring, and contact for individuals in long-term care settings and their family members. And you can imagine how important that is during the pandemic. Regarding the operations of the committee, it is made up of volunteers. Last year, actually, in this report, I asked the Board of County Commissioners to help us identify and support additional members to the committee. And we've been very pleased this year to have had several additional members appointed, so thank you very much for that. At this time, our committee is fully constituted. However, we do have some folks who will be up for reappointment when their terms expire in February of this year, and we have a couple of folks whose eligible terms will end later this year. So we will always be looking for some new members for the committee, and thank you for your support in that. We'd also like to invite you to join one of our meetings if you would like. We meet at 9:30 in the morning on the third Friday of most months. At the moment, we are meeting remotely. We're hoping to be able to move to in-person or hybrid options in the coming months when it is safe. I will say that the remote option has helped us to increase engagement and attendance in our meetings. And I would like to thank Commissioner McDaniel and County Manager, Deputy County Manager, Chantel Robinson, both who have been engaged as a part of our meetings and our conversations as well. And while I'm giving out thanks, I would like to thank the staff of PTRC for really helping to keep us on track and providing us good support and counsel. And with that, I will be glad to answer any questions that you have, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Linda, for your comprehensive report. Do we have any questions for for Linda? I'm not hearing any. I'll just say is you've identified a number of the challenges that basically the pandemic has placed, particularly for seniors and for those trying to provide support for them. And it really has created a lot of isolation and loneliness and an inability actually to provide care. But clearly when you talk about 15,000 transportation trips and you're talking about nearly 300,000 meals served, I mean, there are folks that are braving the sort of the elements and dealing with those and having those contacts. So, but it was promising to hear there'd been some movement in the arena of from face to face and to getting some older folks a little more used to technology. And as one of those folks, I understand that transition is tough, and I'm glad to hear you appreciate, and I appreciate the invitation to your meetings too. Hearing no questions, thank you so much for your report. And I think we're going to take a 5-minute recess, perhaps, a request. So thank you. Thank you all, and we're ready for our last discussion item, which is the Central Library naming, and our Deputy County Manager, Damon Sanders Pratt, will give us a report, and I believe that Donna Staley, our Library Chair, asked to say a word or two at the end of that. So, Damon, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners. In light of a request that the Manager's Office received from the Library Advisory Board, I have a short presentation for you on the naming convention or custom of the board for facilities. So there are some existing county facilities that have been named in honor of people affiliated with the county. And so some of the categories that I've been able to glean from that, and this may not be an exhaustive list, but the ones I could find, were commissioners, former or serving, county facility donors, those facilities that have an interlocal agreement that specified that a name should be associated with a piece of property, land donations, and then one serving county employee. So former commissioners at the time that a facility was named after them were the following. So you have Fred Hooser for the Southside Library Branch in '86, Forrest Conrad for the Clemens Library Branch building, the former one, Maisie Woodruff for the Carver School Road Library, the Pete Brunstetter Tanglewood Pool Complex, and then most recently the Walter Marshall Department of Social Services building. And one thing to note is that one thing that has been kind of relayed as custom is that we're essentially naming the building. So for example, in Clemens, when we actually left the old building and went to the new building, it's not the Forrest Conrad building. It's just another building. We left that facility. So you're actually naming the building. The one serving commissioner at the time of naming is Commissioner Linville, the General Services Complex on Liberty Street. People who donated based on a catalog of giving levels for the different library projects that we recently did. And so each one of those giving levels was associated with a room or a space, which could have been the courtyard or other spaces at those facilities. So for Central, Kernersville, and Clemens, you see those dates, the different names of people who contributed for those, and then have a space in those facilities named after them. But the branches are actually not named after anybody other than Kernersville, which we'll talk about in a second. So there was an interlocal agreement that the county executed with Kernersville when Kernersville donated the land for the space for the new Kernersville Branch Library. And so as a result of that interlocal agreement, it had to be called the Patterson Memorial Library. The county has also received land donations. So there's a Joni Moser Park, which is actually named after a person who was killed in a accident by a drunk driver. And the county bought that park that was actually started by the J.C.'s there. So that's the Joni Moser Park in Louisville. Then the Charles G. Hill family, who acquired property from a Schaub family. And then this Schaub family is one of the original Moravian families in Forsyth County. Well, the Hill family gave 13 acres to Forsyth County and the city of Winston-Salem for a park. And so eventually that became C.G. Hill Park in Pofftown. And then the county's also bought additional acreage from the city to make it a little bigger. And then doctors Malloy, Darius Malloy, Rembert Malloy, and Charles Jordan Jr. Donated the property on which the East Winston Heritage Center branch library stands. So that the facility is also named in their honor. The one serving county employee, and he wasn't serving for long at that time, for maybe about a week. I think Graham retired, but the EMS headquarters building was named in recognition of Graham Previer, the former county manager. So at their January 19th meeting, the library board voted to recommend the commissioners consider naming the Central Library in honor of Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin, a former county employee for 40 years, served as the library director since 2000. So just in summary, there's not really a specific naming guideline that we're following that I'm bringing to you saying this is how we name facilities. It's really been at the commissioner's discretion over a variety of categories, some of which we've talked about commissioners former or serving, county facility donors, interlocal agreements, land donations, and one serving county employee. So you had the library board, advisory board action and correspondence, which you should all have a copy of. And also have here today is their chair, Ms. Donna Staley's here, and the library director's here. So I'll ask Ms. Staley if she want to come up, and then at that point we'll take questions or comments that you may have.
Saving the best for last.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak before you today. You have in your possession, I'm sure, the letter of correspondence, and I wanted to just share that with you and for your consideration. The Forsyth County Public Library Board of Trustees respectfully requests that the Central Library be named in honor of the late Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin. In her 4 decades with the library system, Sprinkle Hamlin broke through many barriers. In 2000, she became the first African-American director and its first female director, and served in that capacity until her retirement in December 2019. Sprinkle Hamlin oversaw the building of 3 new branches: Louisville in 2007, Patterson Memorial in 2018, and much of the planning for the Clemens branch, which opened in 2021. She also oversaw the complete renovation of Central Library, which reopened in 2017. In addition, she created the first bookmobile service for Spanish-speaking residents, brought technology access to people with hearing and visual impairments, and spearheaded the creation of the Computer Training Bridge digital literacy program. She was a tireless advocate for the libraries and a mentor to many in the field. Sincerely, Donna Staley, Chairwoman, Forsyth County Public Library Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donna.
That's what we have to introduce item to you, or the discussion to you.
Yeah, any discussion or timetable, or I guess a question. Let me make just one comment. By the way, Damon, I really do appreciate your assembling all the data on all the future naming of various facilities, parts of facilities, rooms, parks, land, et cetera. And I think the last time we got into one of these conversations, I think it was with Walter Marshall's naming of our Department of Human Services, that DHS building, social services building. I think we need some kind of policy or some kind of, that at least establishes sort of how these things should be brought and take place, instead of just sort of the ways it's not just bubbling up from the community. I think there needs to be a process of some sort. And I think you've already identified some categories that could be a part of that. But I think that would be helpful for the future. I think we're here now, as we have been before, to have this, this discussion. So any comments that would like to be made? I appreciate the library board's recommendation. I think the listing of accomplishments of Sylvia are significant and important milestones, and she's certainly been an important figure in this community in a lot of different ways. Other comments?
Mr. Vice Chairman, if I may, please. Since I serve on the Library Trustee Board, I'd like to ask our chairman if he had any comments, and then I'll make mine.
Mr. Plowler, I think it's referring to you.
Are you talking, asking Dave?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
You're on.
I was deep in thought about Martha Wood. I apologize for that. She was the first one to call me and tell me that she would certainly like to see that. Now, this is a city official, former city official, saying, she would like to name the library after Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin. I have no problem with that. But I do think that Commissioner Martin was correct. What we're doing now has been thoughtful. It's been going on now for at least 8, 9, 10 days. But sometimes it's good to have a policy. I'm thinking already of the courthouse, which is right next door, and that's going to be opening soon. And there are already folks talking to me anyway about we should name that after someone. A good example of the current Hall of Justice used to be called, and probably still is, the Hiram Ward named after Judge Ward out of North Wilkesboro. So that's the kind of thing that's going on. But where Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin is concerned, she was very kind, very sweet, a giving lady who she was different, and she was married to Larry Leon, who was quite a good character in all areas in our community. So together they made themselves known in our town, in our county, and I frankly think that naming the library after Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin is indeed, from my perspective anyway, it's the right thing to do. And it will be known probably as the Hamlin Library from now until the end of this century. But I think that that Fleming Elamine has pinpointed everything in the letter that we have and the resolution he wants to talk about, but I fully support it, and I think it's a good thing.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief because I was late. You know, we discussed this policy issue when we named the DSS building after former Commissioner, Walter Marshall, and we need a discussion. We even went down to examine how Mecklenburg County followed their policies. I think some of us did a little study on other counties. But in the end, we came back with a resolution and a vote from this commission board to name that facility after former Walter Marshall. My hope is that we can also do the same examination, and by the National Black Data Festival in August, come to a resolve to go ahead and name that the Sylvia Hamlin Central Library. And I think all the records will speak for itself. Her influence beyond Forsyth County is well known. She's already received quite a few accolades. The Winston-Salem Foundation wants to name a scholarship in her honor, and I could go down a complete list of honors that she's going to be receiving. So I hope that my colleagues will see the need to go ahead and press this forward, do our policy review, as we should do in due diligence, and come to a conclusion to name this library the Sylvia Hamlin Sprinkle Central Library. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Any other comments?
Yes, Chairman. Vice Chairman, I'm sorry. I wanted to say thank you, Donna, for bringing this to our attention today. I didn't know Ms. Hamlin as intensively as others, but I knew that she had a heart for this community through arts and innovation, and that should be definitely appreciated and recognized. Damien, thank you for the history. I'm brand new here still yet too, so I didn't know how this naming instances is driven. So I appreciate you for doing that. I do believe that policy is probably important, but again, the forefront of what we're doing here and have done for others is the most important. And I'm definitely wanting to support that. I've also heard from Judge Freda Adams on this, and I definitely will be supporting. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Well, hearing none, there seems to be certainly some positive sentiment. I think the policy is a future issue that we ought to try to have one, but we can certainly resolve and address the issue of the Central Library any time that it seems appropriate by this group. Just set up a time for an agenda.
You know, it's a good idea. When Mayor Wood called me, she said, you know, they call the YMCA in Winston-Salem the Central Y. They call the public library the Central Library. And she says there are reasons for that. But she said, in my opinion, and I agree with that, she says, there's some people who do such a really good job to serve the community with their skills and their understanding and their diplomacy. It wouldn't hurt to name the public library the Hamlin Library, which I have to agree with.
Good. I think we have completed that, and Mr. County Manager, it is up to you to give us a review of the February 3rd agenda.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I would, Mr. Elamine has said, has continued to use the Central Library in with Ms. Hamlin, and I'd like to leave the Central, I'd like to combine the two so that folks understand that it's in Central Winston-Salem.
It's a good point.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, Gloria, so can you expound on that? What would it look like? Hamlin/Central?
No,
I'm
How did
confused.
you phrase
I
it?
think my phrasing was Sylvia Hamlin Sprinkle, pardon me, Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin Central Library.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for the clarity.
It's a long name, but we can
We
get
can
down
work
to
it
the
out.
wordsmith of that. Could be Hamlin Central, but Mr. County Manager, go ahead.
Okay. Well, good news is we have a pretty short agenda today. We introduced it last week, and we just need to finalize it. Got the approval of minutes for the January 20th meeting. You've got a budget ordinance amendment for some share of the warrant funds, which you heard about. Item 3 just needed a little bit more explanation, but it'll be brief. It's a resolution approving county policies to aid in the administration of federal coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. You got an associated resolution authorizing the increase in the federal procurement policy. Is Lee Plunkett on the line? You there, Lee?
Yes, sir, I am here.
All right, well, very good. We can hear you well. If you can just review the changes to the item from last week to this week.
Absolutely. As we talked about last week, most of the policies, we did some fine tuning on roles and responsibilities, and so nothing materially changed there. And you have all the final updated versions in the agenda item. We did, however, add one piece, and you'll find that in that second resolution that Dudley read. Essentially, this coincides with our federal procurement policy. And in discussions with our CFO and attorney, we decided to ask for this resolution to be adopted that would increase the federal micro purchase threshold. So essentially that allows the county to procure goods, services, and construction and repair work without soliciting bids up to the allowable amount of state law, which for goods and construction repair is $30,000, services is $50,000, and then there's some exceptions for architectural and engineering services up to $50,000, but there has to be a specific exemption each time that happens. So again, this essentially moves us up from 10,000 up to the allowable limits that are in state law. So it just makes it a little bit easier for those of us managing the funds. And it calls for an annual recertification. And so this is just one time. And then the CFO and attorney suggested doing the annual certification in each budget ordinance. So nothing major, but I know, I think Gordon wanted to maybe go through the conflicts of interest policy really briefly, just to make sure that everyone is on board there. But that is all I have. If you have any questions for me.
I had one question, please, Lee.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an idea of what the increase would result in, the dollar amount potentially?
So it essentially just allows, let me start over. In the uniform guidance, you can go into contract without soliciting bids up to $10,000. And so that was the standard. But the uniform guidance allows local governments to increase that up to $50,000. And so we actually increased it up to whatever the state law allows. So $30,000 for goods and construction repair work, and then $50,000 for services. So it really is just if contracts come in under that amount, there's not a requirement to get bids. Doesn't mean there won't be bids, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
Could I ask you, please, does this address the 3-year funding so that folks are aware that this is not ongoing funding?
So that will be addressed in the agreements that are with each subrecipient. So you award money to any external agency, and so that'll be in the called the period of performance, and that'll be outlined in every agreement.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, these policies are for all federal agreements, all federal contracts for which we receive funding either directly from the federal government or also through the state, but it originally came from the federal government. So this is something we really need to have. What I wanted to quickly draw your attention to, and you have the materials, and I'll definitely encourage you all to read this, is the conflicts of interest and gifts policy. That applies both to you, commissioners, and also to us, the staff. It basically applies to anyone who's involved in negotiating or voting on a contract that's funded by federal money. And so what it states is, in Part A, is that you look to not only yourself, but also your family members or partner. Are they employed by a party the county's contracting with, or a board member or something like that? And so that is broader than the conflicts law in North Carolina, the general conflicts law. So for federal contracts, we have to make sure, all of us, the board and staff included, if we're involved in those, we need to state our conflicts, and if we have a conflict, we need to recuse ourselves or remove ourselves from that discussion. So that would apply to Dudley as well as all of you. And we've taken the opportunity to put in the new state statutes from that Senate bill that just passed involving, your service on nonprofit boards, and we've restated the gifts policy, which we've had, which is basically, we're not allowed to receive gifts from vendors or people who are doing business with the county. And obviously, the new law stated something that's obvious, is that we can't use county contracts, any of us, to receive a personal gain.
Does the use of the word gift define what that word means?
Well, it's something of value, and so you're allowed to receive something of nominal value, but that would be very, very little in terms of value. So, vendors shouldn't be taking us out to dinner or doing anything like that. But obviously, if you have a long-standing relationship with someone who's a friend, there could be gifts that are outside.
That was one of the things I had in my mind. What if somebody asks about 3 members of the Board of Commissioners to meet with them over lunch, and they insist on paying for the meal? And then they hold another meeting for the other 4 or 3. Does that mean we all 3 have to go to jail?
I don't know about jail, but that's discouraged. It's discouraged from accepting things.
Well, yeah, but
It means
still,
you now have a conflict of interest.
in this
with that
case,
person.
I've got to tell you, when Bill Clinton said, define IS, it depends on your definition of the word is, gifts has a few more letters in it, but it still means the same thing. Gift could be a car, could be an airplane ride, might be nothing more than a pat on the back, but I think...
Well, I would say a car or an airplane ride are definitely not allowed. What the state statute says is you can accept meals furnished at banquets. I mean, sometimes you go to say a NACO conference where the meal might be sponsored by somebody, and that's fine.
Okay. I just worry about little things. There's a song many years ago called "Little Things Mean a Lot," and they really do when it comes to individual rights and what you did or what you didn't do or didn't say, and that kind of thing.
Well,
it's a legal thing.
And it lists in here what the state statute lists in here what is acceptable, and it lists advertising items or souvenirs of nominal value, honorariums paid to commissioners for participation in meetings, or meals furnished at banquets. So those are all allowed.
Okay.
Probably the only thing
Honorarium?
They allow honorariums? Yes. I mean, it can't be a huge amount of money, but
Define the word huge.
well, I don't believe so, but I'll look into that.
So you got the item, I think you start understanding the complexity of what we, and a lot of staff have worked through. There's 68 pages in the item, lots of rules around this federal money. But anyway, we're off and running on it. The establishment of these policies voted on the 3rd will open things up to that round 1 kind of recommendations, and we'll get through that in the next cycle. So we're off and running. Item 4 is resolution authorizing the execution of amendment between Forsyth County and the Resource Company. That's the temporary employment services for the public health folks regarding COVID-19 response. That was pretty straightforward. You've got a resolution accepting the quitclaim deed around the airport property. Kirby reviewed that. You've got a couple of items John talked about on the refunds, reports. You've got the tax assessor collector's refund, and then outside economic development fund report, which you just saw. And then Chantel, we have added, based on a human services board meeting, a resolution encouraging all residents and visitors in Forsyth County to wear face coverings, indoors receive vaccination booster shots, and protect themselves. You want to talk?
Thank you, Chantel. If you all remember, the commissioners passed a resolution September 2nd, 2021, encouraging the use of face covering and vaccinations. Commissioner Ellermain and myself serve on the Health and Human Service Board, and some of the members of that board asked for an emergency meeting January 19th. And they felt that they would like to be included in this resolution to encourage folks to get vaccinated and wear a face covering. And it seemed to be very important to them as a board to coordinate with county commissioners, and felt that if we did it together, it might send a larger message. And so basically it's the same resolution, it's just the last 3 paragraphs include the Health and Human Services Board in strongly encouraging our population to wear a mask and to be vaccinated. And this seems to be very important to this board, and Commissioner Ellermain and myself support their desire to be added to this resolution.
I congratulate what you said, because together we make this happen. And if we don't make it happen, we're going to have people wish in the hospital that there had been more positive pushing to get people healthy. And I think you're doing the right thing.
Well, I have a question, Chairman, if I may. Is there any reasoning that there was not a mandate encouraged instead of, a mandate instead of the encouragement? We're just adding their name.
Because of the shortage, nurse and shortage and public health shortage in employees, we could not come to terms to mandate.
Even Novant has that problem.
Right, and there's a Novant representative and a Baptist Atrium representative on this board.
Mark, the issue with, getting this message out, I'd say the message for the last year has been people have been encouraged to death. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious from I'm not a marketing person or a social media person, but it certainly seems like there should be a way to get the statistics we're hearing, that we heard today, about people in the hospital, people on ventilators, the percentages that are unvaccinated, the percentages that have 2 shots, and the percentages that have the booster. It's that kind of information on TV or radio or something that somebody hears and says, well, holy cow, people that are dying, basically 70% of them are, unvaccinated. That sort of gets your attention. That gets my attention a lot more than us encouraging you to wear a mask. I'm just trying to, and we're paying a marketing firm, which I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence of their marketing, but I'm sure it's places that I don't see, I suspect. But it seems that's something we need to be marketing. Are those facts right here locally?
What I will say, Commissioner Martin, both Novant and Atrium, several times a week, they post the statistics of how many individuals are in the hospital for COVID, how many are vaccinated, how many are not. That is being pushed out a lot. In terms of, marketing media type stuff, that's been everywhere. I do have a report for you. I've been trying to get them to simplify it. You will appreciate it, so I'll send it to you because it has lots of data. I don't think anybody else is going to really understand it, though. But I'll send it. I'll pass it along. But there has been, I would say, the last 2 weeks, we did pull some stuff down and are revamping. And the reason for that is most of the things we had up stated, to get vaccinated to stop the spread. And we've had to change the messaging about getting vaccinated so that you're not as severe of an illness and it prevents, hospitalizations and those types of things. So they're working on some rebranding, and we're also working on some joint messaging with both hospitals. We have a joint marketing media team that's been working on some joint messaging.
Yeah, I think there was some acknowledgement in the data that no matter what we're doing, we're not moving the vaccination numbers. And then, the mask issues had gotten so politicized that really the data to hone in on, and so you'll see us pivot a little bit just in the presentations to the board, is really around hospitalizations. Because, as this thing moves from pandemic to endemic, it's going to, that's really the number to look to and watch. And so, and that is also where the compelling data to get vaccinated is when you see the statistics around hospitalization, who's vaccinated and who's not, and how dangerous this is. It struck me today that that what Mr. Lindsay said was, if you are on a ventilator, then you're 50-50 to live at that point. And it's that kind of really profound sort of message. I don't know if you saw it. There's a full-page ad in the paper either last week or this week, and it had an exhausted nurse, with her back against the wall, and it said, "I'm not asking. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not asking. I'm not encouraging you. I'm begging." And it was a really a strong message. And that's, at this point. And I heard both Kevin High and Jeff Lindsay say it, somebody's dug in on this, we're probably not going to convince them. And that's really that was where the conversation at the Health and Human Services Board meeting was.
But to kind of pound home the point you made, what Jeff said today is exactly true. And by the way, exactly 1 year ago, Novant called me and said, "Look, this is coming." And this is before we had a pandemic declared. And we're afraid it's going to fill up Forsyth Medical Center and probably Atrium. And we're looking at an empty building that used to be the women's hospital in Greensboro. And we're thinking about buying that just to get beds to treat people. And that was before all this happened. And they still didn't have enough people to take care of, train people in this community. It's brand new, but gosh knows we're at a point now, 12 months later, and we're still trying to get people to get vaccinations. If I had to face something, the death of anyone in my family because I didn't get a shot, I couldn't live with myself. Just couldn't.
So Dudley, so that I'm clear, if anyone enters into any county facility, is it mandatory that they wear the mask, or is it just encouraged?
We are mandated in county buildings.
In county buildings. Yep. Fair enough.
Yep.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just 30 seconds. In our discussion, at our meeting with my colleague, Commissioner Winston, Dr. Rory made the appeal because he said he was seeing a substantial increase in his patients who were testing positive. He was treating them like 400%. But the solution was really in vaccinating because Winston-Salem has a mandate, but you can measure the impact this has on people taking vaccinations or not. And the impact is not always direct. So I think what we resolved to do was far more effective. I wish we had a message to these people who decide not to be vaccinated. When I saw that news report of that guy who needed a heart transplant and he's almost dying, and he still had resolved not to be vaccinated. He'd rather die than get vaccinated and get a heart transplant. To me, that's just insane, but I'm just, a regular fellow. I just don't understand that kind of thinking. But that's what's out there. That's what we're really up against.
Yes, sir.
Those who refuse to be vaccinated for whatever reasons are the catalyst for this whole increase and even these variants that we're having. It's really concentrated from that population of people. And I won't get into a huge discussion because I was, 420?
No, I get it. I'm just thinking through other individuals that folks infect because they don't they're not encouraged. They're encouraged, but they're not encouraged to wear the mask. So, that's
Mr. Chairman.
how I feel.
Yes,
Could I
sir.
use a little bit of my reserved time to speak?
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
That reason I keep some reserved time in case Mr.
You can have
Kaplan
all the
wants to
time
talk
you
more
want.
than I do, then I can still talk a little bit. And I'll make this short as I can. Chantel, did you say that the hospital people or health people were working on some kind of something, news that they can put out about what is, just what we heard? The main thing that Mr. Lindsay said was just as what exactly you've said. The person gets on a ventilator, they get about a 50-50 chance. It don't make a whole lot of difference what kind of, I don't pretend to be any kind of health specialist, but I've seen things. It don't take if you get on a ventilator, it don't make much difference what's wrong with you. You're in bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
So if they could put out, and I've seen, we all have, I've seen some of these things on news where people would not take the vaccine and they ended up getting it. They nearly ended up passing on, but did not. I've seen a number of that on TV, and I've talked to quite a few people about, people that or I do sometimes ask if they've had the vaccine, and they'll say no. And some of them, I've even talked to some people that's in the health field, and either hadn't or even hadn't fully vaccinated, and why they would have reservations, I don't know. As far as mandating, if I was convinced that a few more people would take it, or a lot more people would take it, I would probably do that. I would probably be willing to mandate, but I don't see that a lot more will. Through the health department, they have paid people, given them these cards of value. That's not the right word, but anyway, paid people. I wish they'd have come out before the time that I did, and I'd got a little bit of that. Maybe all of us would have. But before the time came that, they had it ready, I'd already made up my mind, as bad as I'd dislike taking vaccinations of any kind. And is it still that the people at an age, and I don't know where they start saying people in age, I use in age and not old. I don't know where that starts at, maybe 65. That group of people, had most of them, isn't that the highest percentage of people that's taking vaccination? The reason for that is because the reality is, and the facts are, that people that's in age, if they get any kind of sickness, it's harder for them to ward it off than it is younger people. And a lot of people in age don't like to take vaccinations either, but they did because they know as we progress in age, you just can't ward things off. If they can come up with things like some information like we got today and put it out there from the health field without the mandate, and I think that will do more than anything. But there's good. There is, for some various reasons, there's some of it is political. In the beginning, I didn't think that, but it is. I've come to that conclusion. And some of it is because people are afraid to the adverse effects on the vaccines, and younger people think they're less likely to get it, but people in their 40s, I know some of them, has gotten it. So I don't know what the total answer is, but I do not believe that mandates is it. When you can't pay people to do something, or you pay them and they still don't want to do it, what else there is to do? Now maybe that for the people in the health field, for them to suggest that elected bodies like we and others mandate, they may, I don't know what I think their main thought is that they want to try anything that will get people to more vaccinated people. And I think they may feel that, you know, they need to go to that extent to say that's what needs to be done, because they're simply in the health field. There's no perfect answer, and when you offer to pay people to do something and they don't, I don't know what else you do. But encouraging, all that kind of thing, I'm for. Putting out information out there that's available, I'm for. But to just mandate, I don't, probably get criticism from it, but I don't, the fact is, there's places that has been mandated, and I don't think people is doing any more than they were. But what I see, the few places I go, I see lots of people wearing masks. And since we've been wearing masks, I have walked twice as much as I did before, because every time I went into a store or started into the store, I had many times, not every time, I had forgot my mask and I had to go back to the vehicle and get it. So I guess that has been good for me to get more exercise. Thank y'all for your indulgence.
Good point.
Mr. Kaplan, you want to talk? I know you've got some good ideas, you just won't tell them.
Mr. Chairman, we do have one announcement if we're done with the conversation that I'll turn to Chantel to provide. So.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So I am happy to announce that we have selected our new Social Services Director, who will start on February 28th. Her name is Christine Dowdell. She currently serves as the Director of Social Services in Shawan County. She has over 30 years of experience. She's worked as a child welfare supervisor in Mecklenburg County. She's worked for the Department of Health and Human Services for the state as a program consultant and trainer. She's been a licensed social worker for Guilford County government, Guilford County schools, has been an adjunct professor at several universities. Bachelor of Social Work, Master of Social Work, and she even has a practical nursing diploma, so you'll have to ask her about that piece of her life. But she is familiar with the Winston-Salem area. Two of her children went to Winston-Salem State University, so she's very excited to start working here for us. And so I did want to inform all of you that Ms. Dowdell will be joining us on February 28th.
Perfect.
Good.
Is that it?
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Helaminas, move we adjourn. I'll second the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.